Szanowni Państwo, niezależnie czy oglądacie na Twitchu czy na YouTubie, przed nami filmor Ziggy'ego D. Jest to już kolejny filmik Ziggy'ego, który udostępnił po tym, jak odwiedził Grinding Gear Games w Nowej Zelandii. Mieliśmy okazję już wcześniej obejrzeć, u mnie też na YouTubie, jako nowy pokaz druida, tu wyglądał wiele lepiej i faktycznie ten pierwszy akt druidowy wyglądał naprawdę fajnie. A tutaj widzimy, będzie akt drugi, akt trzeci, może nawet trochę dalej. Akt 2 and 3 preview. Zobaczmy, co Ziggy D ma do powiedzenia.
G'day folks, Ziggy D here, back with part 2 of my Druid hands-on preview. Thanks again to GGG for flying me over to the studio, and
O, to
keep in
chyba
mind that this
szamanem gra,
footage
nie?
is a week old and...
To już od razu, bo oglądałem sporo, 10 razy chyba oglądałem ten reveal druidycki pierwszy i wydaje mi się, że to, co teraz widzieliście, ten taki... to jest chyba odpalenie Apokalips. I tu w ogóle kolejną rzecz chciałem zwrócić uwagę. Apokalips zdaje się, że u niego już trwa 23 sekundy, czyli strasznie dużo. Czyli pewnie już ma wsparte to jakimiś support gemami typu more duration i może jakieś efekty na skill effect duration na drzewku. Patrzcie na to.
Again to GGG for flying me over to the studio, and keep in mind that this footage is a week old and non-final. Things can and have changed. If you didn't see the previous video, part 1, then check that out for context, as this video builds upon that one. Now, just a note on my overall power level, as that was a topic of discussion a fair bit in the first video, to help you
A
get...
właśnie, to też czemu
kind
mi
of
złapało za ten czat? Co tu się dzieje? U mnie w komentarzach
Now,
też się pojawił ten temat, że hej Piotrek, no on bije dużo, ale czy ty widziałeś w ogóle jakie on ma itemy? I wydaje mi się, że ludzie przesadzali. Widzieliśmy tam jego itemy na filmie, on nie miał flatów na biżuterii, jedyne co miał, to miał odrobinę flatów na broni i +2 na broni. To nie jest coś, co nie wiem, mnoży ci obrażenia 10-krotnie. To jest trochę boost obrażeń, ale to nie jest też broń jakaś niewyobrażalna. To znaczy, jeśli aktywnie sprawdzasz vendorów, jeśli będziesz robił mechanikę ligową, jeśli będziesz używał orbów, to jest nawet spora szansa, że sam będziesz miał broń po prostu lepszą na tamtym etapie. Zwłaszcza, że mówimy tutaj o broni dwuręcznej. Więc powiem wam, że ci wszyscy ludzie, którzy mówią, ej, on miał po prostu niesamowite itemy, niesamowitą broń i dlatego tak dużo bił, no to nie uważam, żeby to było takie niesamowite. To właśnie wyglądało, jakby to po prostu dużo biło i tyle.
Note on my overall power level, as that was a topic of discussion a fair bit in the first video, to help you gauge kind of where I'm at. It's a little bit tricky because baseline, I think my gear overall was pretty solid,
Sam
quite
się do
good in
tego
Act
odnosi,
1,
widzę.
and then pretty reasonable to good for what I think will be the case with the Vile Temples that everyone's going to have access to, in addition to Abyss Crafting and the other various improvements
tak,
that
jeszcze
have been
chyba
made
od
there.
aktu drugiego
our
będziemy
gear's
mieć te
looking pretty
sekrety.
good, but I didn't have anything super crazy in Act 2 and 3, but I was able to fix bad slots when needed for the most part. The biggest gap was spellcaster weapons, affecting spell power level, so they were all a little bit more underpowered than they probably should be to look at. Also, due to skipping through some of the larger zones and missing a side quest or two, I ended up a bit underleveled and underpassived. And because I'm trying to test as many different setups as possible, my gem levels and supports are all a little bit bad for a long time. I'm quite a few levels behind on some skills and don't have supports kind of filled out for nearly everything. So probably a bit better than average gear, but a bit worse than average passives and gems. Anyway, make of that what you will. As I...
Cześć Baltazron, siema.
Dobry wieczór, Piotrku. Chciałbym tylko dodać, że on miał broń Piotr Gamer, Piotr Chaos.
No właśnie, ale czy taka broń to jest prawdziwa broń? Zobaczymy, jaką będzie miał teraz, ale w ogóle zobaczmy, co to jest za nowy skillek. Thunderstorm. Thunderstorm. Tworzysz, to jest w ogóle AOE Sustained Lightning Duration Spell. No chyba wszystkie te spele druida są sustained, nie? Właśnie takie związane z duration, że zdaje się, że po prostu stakowanie skill effect duration będzie bardzo przyjemne na druidzie. Nawet podstawowo to trwa aż 12 sekund. Realistycznie no dodasz jakiś jeden support gem związany z duration, odrobinę na weapon swapie dodasz sobie, nie wiem, z 50% skill effect duration i nagle taki Thunderstorm to pół minuty będzie trwało, to popierdzielone. No i co tutaj masz w ogóle? Że przeciwników polewa wodziczką. A polewasz wodziczką przeciwników. Przeciwnicy, którzy są nawodnieni poprawnie, łatwiej się ich frezuje i łatwiej się ich szokuje. Ale nie są to większe szoki, to też warto zwrócić uwagę. Natomiast sam ten skill też zadaje lightning damage, czyli sam w sobie będzie też prawdopodobnie szokował. Okay.
I get a chance to cut my first level 5 gem, and this tier gives access...
O właśnie, to jest w ogóle jest element podlewania kwiatków, bo patrzcie na to.
Anyway, make of that...
Plants in the area become overgrown. Dobra, to brzmi jak na jakiejś zyrze w League of Legends, nie? Że kwiatki se podlewasz.
What you will. As I move into Act 2, I get a chance to cut my first level 5 gem, and this tier gives access to some pretty key skills for a few of the druid playstyles. You've got
No właśnie, powinno być sikanie wilkiem, żeby oznaczać teren i też watering the plants.
Thunderstorm.
I dobra, i faktycznie. Czekaj. On tu pokazuje jakiś skill, który jest plantem. Briar Path. Na przykład jest to Spirit Gem, który sprawia while active, a portion of the physical damage deal is stored. Casting a spell is stored damage. Okej, że gdy atakujesz, to odkładasz część obrażeń tak jakby w buffie. Potem, gdy rzucasz jakikolwiek czar, to ten odłożone wcześniej obrażenie z ataków tworzą specjalną taką drogę, thorny ground, że podłogę z kolcami. I widzę, że to ma taga plant, czyli że to dostaje z kolei buffa, jeśli połączymy to z tym nawadnianiem. Czyli faktycznie tu się wszystko kombi. Tutaj macie tak na dobrą sprawę kombo 3 elementów.
Skills for a few of the druid playstyles. You've got Thunderstorm with synergies for plant, lightning and
Czekaj, a czy jest napisane tutaj w tooltipie tego Overgrowtha coś ciekawego?
playstyles. You've got
Zobaczmy. Plant skills. Plants to są roślinki stworzone przez roślinkowe skille. Mogą być właśnie overgrown, zboostowane na różne sposoby, na przykład właśnie przez nawadnianie, zakładam. Okej, czyli nie ma tu żadnych nowych informacji. A na samej tej umiejętności nie ma też chyba nic a propos bycia overgrown, co nie? Okej.
Thunderstorm with synergies for plant, lightning and cold damage builds. More on those later. Devour for much easier charge generation on the wyvern. Pretty key piece for those builds. And Arctic Howl for freeze werewolves. And then Fury of the Mountain for the bear form, which is what I take first. And this one is excellent. This is a slam skill that
Pokaż.
creates fissures. You can have up to 12 of them out at a time. And it generates rage on.
To jest to, co ludzie wcześniej myśleli, że druid będzie mógł korzystać z Volcanic Fissure, a to jest po prostu coś bardzo podobnego. Ma jakby taką druidycką, osobną wersję Volcanic Fissure.
Hit. This skill immediately replaced Maul as the basic attack for
Śmiesznie mi to w sumie wygląda, bo wiecie, z czym mi się to kojarzy? Patrzcie, jak on sobie stąpuje, pan druidzik tym.
It generates rage on hit. This skill immediately replaced Maul as the basic attack for bear for me, since it does the same role of rage generation,
Sezon o 20.
and Fury of the Mountain does a whole lot more in addition to that too.
Cześć, Wiedźma.
As a Fisher skill, Shockwave Totem can trigger bonus pulses, so that's a lot of extra damage for you. And there's even better news here. The pulses can also generate rage on each hit in addition to that initial slam. So the Totem Fishers just keep pulsing and they keep your rage topped up while you spend it slamming away. It's really nutty. So crazy in fact...
Czekaj. Czyli stawiasz fiżery, Shockwave Totem je tak jakby cały czas aktywuje i tak na dobrą sprawę cały czas ci to podtrzymuje rage'a, tak? Okej, spoko.
That I thought it probably wasn't intended and was a bug. So I asked the developers and they're like, oh, we'll take a look at that. But then I asked Mark in the Q&A, he said, you know, it actually should work that way because that's fun and cool. And true to their word, I double checked and that seems to be the plan. So it's a really sick rage generator skill there. That passive ongoing rage generation is super nice for bear form, routing that out a lot. And on top of that, for Fury of the Mountain, since it's a slam skill, each of the initial hits can trigger volcano projectiles. So you can toss down your volcano projectiles and slam those out. As a bit of a side note, that's kind of related to this. In the updated patch notes, they just posted that the rage decay rate was halved and the time before it begins increased from 2 to 4 seconds. So it's now much easier to keep rage up between packs as well. So all around rage and bear form is looking really comfy to play. There's so many lines of
Okej, czyli jest dużo łatwiej generować i utrzymać rage niż na początku ludzie zakładali.
combo interactions going on here with like the bear form kind of approach. You've got Volcano being triggered by Fury of the Mountain and Furious Slam. Then you've got Shockwave Totems triggering the Fissures from Fury of the Mountain and the Jagged Ground that you create with Empowered Furious Slams. And it's all fueled by the continuous rage generation going on from the totems triggering the Fissures on enemies, powering those Furious Slams. So it's kind of looping. There's a lot of feedback loops of damage going on here. Makes for pretty satisfying bossing. And it's actually like pretty straightforward to play as well. You don't really have to think about all of those like complex lines of play. You just kind of do all the things on top of each other. It works great.
Okej, Ziggy mówi, że rzeczy tak mocno się kombią ze sobą, że wręcz nie musiał za bardzo myśleć o kombosach, po prostu se grał, a rzeczy i tak się kombowały, bo większość skilli miała jakąś tam interakcję ze sobą. No w każdym razie, okej, to wygląda to ciekawie. Ja nie jestem przekonany do wykorzystywania tutaj totemu akurat, ale no może na jakiegoś bossa to nie będzie mi przeszkadzać. To znaczy... powiem wam trochę, z czym mi się ten totem kojarzy w tej instancji. Jak mieliśmy w Path of Exile 1 taki moment, w którym każdy dodawał totem Ancestral Warchief do każdego Mylasa, Ancestral Warchief i Ancestral Protector. Oni potem od tego odeszli. Mam nadzieję, że tutaj też nie będziemy widzieć totema na każdym, że tak powiem, buildzie, który tutaj coś próbuje działać.
I played this setup for too long because I was a bit unsure if Fury of the Mountain was working as intended. So I don't think I did it full justice gameplay wise. But basically you can drop a volcano or two with the extra charge and a totem, then Fury of the Mountain, a couple fishes out, pounce in via wolf form, and then Furious Slam repeatedly until everything is dead or you repeat that cycle. At higher levels, I think you'll be able to work in Ferocious Roar with Infernal Cry. It should be a great addition for some extra fire damage, and Rampage could also be lots of fun to use instead of or before the slams, maybe, to trigger the fishes as you run around. Anyway, I'm sure many of you at this point are sold on Bear. I know I am. So let's take a look at some of the other things. Arctic Howl is a Cold Warcry-like skill for werewolf form that deals some cold damage in an area and knocks them back.
On powiedział, że to jest Warcry-like, ale to nie jest chyba Warcry, nie? Nie ma tak... Nie, dobra, jest Warcry, to jest Warcry.
For werewolf form that deals some cold damage in an area and knocks them back. Mainly though, this one insta-freezes any enemies that are primed for freeze, which is, I believe, anything over 70% freeze build-up on bosses and lower for other enemies. Upon freezing enemies or hitting an already frozen enemy, Arctic Cry gives your allies bonus cold damage and chilled ground generation, and it empowers some of your own attacks with added cold damage. So the fact that it works...
zamraża przeciwników, którzy już mają jakby nastakowane odrobinę, że tak powiem, drogi do freeza, no i daje ci bonusik potem.
On already frozen enemies is really key to it not being awkward to use. I mean, it's great when it lets you freeze enemies earlier, especially bosses, but in most cases, regular enemies are just frozen from one Lunar Assault anyway, right? You're doing so much damage proportional to the health, and we have so much freeze build-up scaling that everything's frozen and you don't really get it. You'd kind of miss your opportunity if it was like that. So there's like a support element to this skill that'll be pretty interesting for party play, or of course minion builds like Wolfpack builds. But I should note that in the version of the game that I was playing at this point, the Wolf minion parts of the Druid were still being finalized, so it's not something I could really gauge. An issue of this particular Lunar Assault and Shred style with Arctic Howler that I noticed is that any empowers often end up just getting used by a quick Shred attack, which is pretty low impact for an empower. Empower typically makes more sense for big, heavy hits like slams, where the limited nature of those empowerments fits better, right? And that's somewhat at odds with the Wolf, which is pretty fast and lots of really fast little hits. It's possible that it can be used to empower maybe like a pure Lunar Assault setup more for clearing, I imagine, with Herald of Iron.
Okej, czyli jest tu jakiś element empowerowania, ale Ziggy nie miał problem ze znalezieniem w tym jakiegoś sensu i synergii na razie, ale to pytanie, czy GG by wprowadziło gdzieś do skilla empower tego z dupy, czy potem będzie jakaś synergia na przykład z unikatem nadchodzącym, czy coś takiego. Swoją drogą, zapowiedzieli chyba 11 nowych unikatów, ile my z nich widzieliśmy może? Widzieliśmy... ze dwa chyba talizmany unikatowe, broń Zatsiri i to by było chyba na tyle, nie? Ciekawy jestem zwłaszcza dropów Zatsiri, ale to jest taka duża dygresja już.
I said in-game. So I'm sure we'll figure out a place for it. I'm also wondering if it like has potential as a piece in some sort of mixed melee builds like, I don't know, wolf monks or something. Despite Empower not adding much for my playstyle, I still ended up using this skill as a way to freeze bosses early, and I also linked it to Ice Bite as a way to generate the Ice Bite damage buff. So that was nice, but definitely lower impact than some of the other skills that we got for the wolf form.
Cześć Dartian, siema. Oj, nie wchodzę teraz w dramowe rzeczy, ale no, Drutu odwalił.
Early in Act 2, I had my next entrance to the Val Temple, and things started getting more interesting with more options for rooms and actual room upgrading occurring. For example, linking the workshop to the bronze workers, which I was able to place to create 4 tier 2 rooms. I think ways to upgrade guardhouses are also possible at this level, as I recall seeing those a little bit later on. So this is still very simple, early intro tutorial level sort of stuff here, before you unlock the time travel version of the temple later on. But with further improved crafting and loot rooms now at this point, so it's a bit more impactful on your gear upgrading. The special rare monsters in some of the rooms were pretty spicy as well, but the Icicle Shred Wolf action seemed to be getting more and more effective as I progressed, and I didn't have too many difficulties.
Powiem wam, że wilk to jest jedno, ale po tym jak pokazali szamana jako ascendancję, z tym jakie on będzie miał możliwości defensywne, w ogóle może, nie wiem czy widzieliście, że tam będzie miał jakieś kosmiczne ilości adaptacji, czyli takiego less elemental damage taken. Jeszcze jeśli niedźwiedź będzie miał wbudowane armor damage aplikujący się do elemental damage'a, to kurde, pod HCK to druid pod niedźwiedzia szamana się wydaje jakąś zupełnie niesamowitą bestią defensywną, że tak pomijając właśnie tego wilka. Dzięki Bierdonka za premika, za 4 miesiące, bardzo miło. Cześć, jestem świeżo pieczonym graczem P2, fajnie mi się gra Wiedźmą, chciałbym się spytać o jakieś porady. Słuchaj, Lam, w sumie to powiem ci dwie rzeczy a propos Wiedźmy i a propos początków. Na pewno jeśli chodzi o początki, to pokażę ci, że już zrobiliśmy filmik z Bysiorem, który wejdzie na YouTube'a dzisiaj rano, który się nazywa Jak zacząć grać Path of Exile 2 poradnik. I to jest 45-minutowy poradnik, tak na dobrą sprawę, który będzie można podesłać nowemu graczu. Jak będziecie chcieli wprowadzić kolegę i kolega mówi, hej, nie wiem jak zacząć grać w PoE, trochę mnie to przeraża, to ma po prostu wyczerpać wszystkie potencjalne pytania i problemy. No i na Wiedźmie dobrą miotłę trzeba znaleźć, to też prawda. Cześć Fapsiun, dobranoc, smacznych snów. Może być tutaj Maxerel, Maxer, to będzie działać. Jakiś tam tanki rerek.
And indeed, after my little temple foray to upgrade my gear, I peaced out and went right into the Rudia fight, where we get to see the power of freeze scaling this setup has access to here.
Ty właśnie, ile on tutaj debuffów nakłada. To jest drugi akt i on nakłada tak. Ignite, wydaje mi się, że z broni, bo on miał, nie, z wulkanu chyba. Dużo chilla, szoka, hinder, armor break. Co to jest? Flammability, magnitude? I chyba jeszcze z torrentsów jakiś tam slow.
I think she got to do like one flamethrower attack in between long freezes, which are starting to get scaled by some freeze duration buffs at this point from the tree and supports. She didn't even get a chance to do a final melee form. Ooh. So after that, I got to try out Thunderstorm. This is a spell that has a lot of different applications. It strikes an area with lightning bolts
Thunderstorm
over long
to jest
duration,
ten
so it's just
deszczyk,
another
nie?
sustained damage thing
Na
you can
podlewanie
throw in.
kwiatków.
But it's a combo piece for quite a few setups because the rainstorm, like, also creates, well, rain. It moistens things. The rain drenches enemies. I feel like this is a meme skill at this point, so PoE. Making them have
Łona miał taki utwór, konewka kiedyś. Polecam.
The chance to be shocked and their freeze build up on the enemies that are drenched. That rain also waters your plants. So silly. We'll take a look at that one later, but for now it's pretty effective as a booster akin to, say, Volcano for Icewolf. We just throw it down for some extra damage. I used the extra charge to be able to get 2 of them out from the support. Overabundance, and that was a noticeable amount of extra sustained damage. And then on top of that, it would moisten the enemies, making them even easier to freeze. Not that I really needed that at this point. Pretty nice.
No właśnie mówiłem o tym w sumie chyba na poprzednim jakimś tam gameplayu, który oglądaliśmy, ale zapowiada się na to, że spodziewam się, że wilkołakiem to będzie taki trochę gameplay jak Ice Strike mnichem na kampanii, że po prostu każdego bossa będziesz perma-freezował i w zasadzie w obrębie tam freezów go zazwyczaj wybombiał, co brzmi całkiem bezpiecznie na HC swoją drogą, bo ja teraz właśnie nie mogę się zdecydować, która ascendancja, która tam typowo przemiana, cały czas mi się to mota w głowie, podejmę decyzję pewnie w praktyce po prostu testując sobie rzeczy, ale czy to będzie niedźwiedź, czy to będzie wilkołak u mnie, zobaczymy.
And rares, and it gave me a bit of boosted kind of area denial management since I didn't get to try Herald of Ice in my testing with this playstyle, so I was lacking a little bit of that AoE clear, which this helped make up for. It was pretty satisfying pinning the Jin in a corner. She's usually quite the pest, this boss, teleporting around and everything. And the ice shards stack and explode right under her when it gets against a wall like this as well. You can get that nice shotgunning going on. It's pretty awesome, even though I actually kind of screwed up the combo. But anywho, I grabbed Devour next and just give it a brief test. This skill allows you to leap onto a colorable enemy or corpses and eat their bloody faces. Eating faces gives you a flat regen buff to heal up and generates power charges for you as well. This skill represents a pretty big turnaround for the power charge issue for Lightning Wyvern. It makes it really easy to sustain empowered lightning form while clearing. It's not like killing Palmon Monk, I think, since the fact that you can use it on corpses means that you can basically use it when you want. You're not trying to like time that very narrow window of trying to get some cullable enemy to cull. Surprised by how good Devourer felt overall to use. I think skills like this are normally very clunky, but they've made this like as forgiving and as strong as they dared to, I suspect. The issue is, of course, that in boss fights, you just don't have anything to cull unless they have some ads or corpses nearby. It seems that most boss fights don't really have a plentiful supply of that in PoE2 currently. So you do have that issue of not having access to Devourer during the entirety of boss fights, meaning you still rely on that kind of like stun build-up Wing Blast. And that makes power charged Lightning Wyvern a bit of a tough nut to crack.
Okej, czyli mówi o tym Ziggy D, że przynajmniej na tym etapie kampanii, drugi, trzeci akt, Wyverna była trochę clunky na bossach, bo dosyć mocno bazuje na generacji power charge, a jest o nią ciężko na bossach. Da się to zrobić stunując bossa, ale no ile ty razy na bossie to zrobisz realistycznie? No może 2 razy?
For bossing at this point in the campaign still. Like maybe there exists some nice solutions with supports and things later on, but it only really works well for clearing at this point. Of course, Magma, Orb, and Volcano combo exist as a fairly potent fallback for many bosses, as long as they're not like too small and mobile. And Thunderstorm, as an extra addition, now gives you a shock boost and some extra sustained damage that you can weave in.
And leave you to the sand!
Dzięki, nomady.
Leave you to the sand!
So sending in Sekimas was up next, and I think any of the strategies can work here. Even Wyvern, so duration, spell spam, you just go slow and safe, that should work just fine. Bear form with Fury of the Mountain Fishers and Totems for just like really easy ranged melee should be super safe. And then even Wyvern with Volcano, Storm, and Magma at range should just be like a nice easy range spellcaster approach if you want to go that route. I end up going for possibly the hardest Wolf form as it's kind of proper melee, but that said, it's decently powerful and it goes just kind of fine with a bit of hit and run and taking
Jeśli chodzi o tego
advantage of
wilkołaka, to mnie trochę martwi jedna rzecz, to znaczy ludzie to już tam zwrócili uwagę, poklipowali i tak dalej, że na poprzednim gameplayu, który pokazał, to te wilki blokowały. Jest klasyczny problem Path of Exile 2, czyli miniony blokujące się nawzajem. Totalny klasik. Na jednym z klipów faktycznie pokazał, jak gra tym wilkołakiem w jakichś ciasnych korytarzach krypt w aktu pierwszego i tam miniony po prostu nie dochodzą do przeciwnika, bo jeden się blokuje od tyłek drugiego i tam wącha. Czy wolałbyś Divinity Original Sin 3 czy coś nowego? Kurde, mam nadzieję przede wszystkim, że nowy Divinity będzie nadal grą turową. Niektórzy spekulują, że to nie będzie gra turowa, tak jak stare Divinity nie były grami turowymi, a ja chcę turową, ja lubię turówki, no co mogę powiedzieć.
freeze, but I have practiced a lot of Sekimas runs, so that does help. I suggest maybe going for one of the other routes or just getting a little bit overpowered and doing some hit and run freeze action if you're going wolf form in Sekimas.
Tirówki, no. Okej. To dobrze słyszeć, Alex Sky.
I need more time for that!
Kurde, zadymiarski jest ten druid w sumie, dużo się dzieje. Wydaje mi się, że jedną rzecz, którą właśnie mi się podoba na pewno w tym druidzie, to że nie szczędzili tego skill effect duration, że wydaje się, że jak postawisz taki Thunderstorm, to faktycznie będzie trwał 30 sekund, bo gdybyś musiał go faktycznie, nie wiem, co parę sekund odnawiać, to by było za dużo jak dla mnie.
So, as for ascending, Oracle felt like a bit of a rabbit hole that I didn't want to dive into in my somewhat limited time, so I ended up going for a bit more straightforward and fun-looking Shaman. Interestingly, the node that I actually
Szymon.
took got changed as I was playing. So that's what happens when you're playing on the live dev version of the game in the end. No point showing you the earlier version, but the newer version gave enemies in my presence exposure and 10% extra damage as random element, which is fun and fits with the node that I get later on too.
Że
Not only
nawet
it took me
wystarczy, że przeciwnik
way
jest wokół ciebie i już ma obniżone rezisty.
long to figure out how I was giving enemies exposure, because this just happened in the background. It was a different node when I picked it, right? It didn't have that mechanic at all. I was very confused until I eventually just randomly looked at my Ascendancy and was like, huh, that looks different. So, with some bonus elemental damage online, I head back into Act 2 with my beloved wolf form to test out the new cross-slash skill that I picked up at some
Takiego
point.
X-sika
This
robi, poka.
executes a short hopback with a massive X-shaped slash.
Taki odskok
It's a
trochę,
pretty important
jak
skill
na
for many
escape
wolf
shocie, ale
builds for two
szybsze.
main reasons. It triggers any marks on the target, which in the case of Predator's mark from Pounce means that you can summon wolves on demand. I imagine that also means that you can explode freezing or voltaic marks with it too, if you want to get some
A,
extra.
to ciekawe, czyli jak dobrze rozumiem, jak masz jakieś marki, które na przykład robią coś, gdy przeciwnik zginie, to używając cross-slasha możesz aktywować ten efekt dowolnie, bez jakby zabijania przeciwnika. To ciekawe.
Damage from that. And on top of that, when triggering marks this way, cross slash causes an extra shockwave of damage too. And then for the Ice Werewolf builds, cross slash is very powerful, as it scoops up any of those ice fragments in the area and dumps them all in the middle of that X. That means that you go from sometimes hitting bosses or rares with half or so of the icicles to being able to hit them with every single icicle every time if you time it right. That's a big burst damage boost to the build. So this unlocks like a new play strategy now. It looks a little something like Pounce In, marking the enemy, Lunar Assault, and maybe an Arctic Howl to freeze them. Then go for a full shred combo.
Właśnie, bo widzicie, on tutaj zostawia takie, tutaj ice fragmenty i tym X-slashem je jakby zbiera i też wali przeciwnikowi. Jeszcze waląc tego, nie wiem, podchodzisz do bossa, zmarkujesz go pounce'em i walniesz tego takiego X-slasha, takiego X-sika i od razu samonuje ci wilki, jak rozumiem.
Freeze them.
Spoko.
Then go for a full shred combo and cross slash to dump all of the icicles from that shred combo on them, and then start shredding again while those explode until the enemies unfreeze. Then when it's unfrozen or you finish your next combo, hit another cross slash for good measure to just scoop up all the rest of those little icicle shards. With a bit of attack speed scaling, it seems like you definitely get time for like 2 full shred combos during the course of a lot of freezes, especially if you start scaling freeze duration as well.
Długość freeza. Nie powinienem o niej rozmawiać na filmie.
I'm not ready yet. Your leash is snapped. Let's finish this. I'm not ready yet.
The hopback part of the cross slash could have felt annoying. There's been cases where this has been, the case for other skills, especially when trying to do like single target damage. You don't really want to be like going away from the enemy trying to damage.
Nie, to jest dokładnie to, co
But in
mówiłem.
this case,
Boss
didn't feel
jest
like an issue,
zamrożony
thanks to
przez całą
Shred having
walkę.
that built-in mini leap to the target on the first attack. That made it feel really smooth and satisfying, and only like kind of added to that already crazy mobility feeling of the werewolf form. You're leaping in and out really smoothly. They really, I think, captured the frenzied feeling of what I want from a werewolf. Something about the way like you pounce in and then tear away with your hands is very satisfying. It often makes it feel like, oh man, I'm just like dismantling these bosses. I'm pulling them apart limb by limb.
Okej, czyli Ziggy D strasznie zachwala, jak im wyszedł wilkołak. To właśnie dobrze, bo myślę, że dużo osób przedstawiało taką obawę, że wilkołak będzie za bardzo jak reskin mnicha. Może przynajmniej tylko ja słyszałem takie jakieś obawy, a tu brzmi i wygląda, jakby faktycznie to było coś innego.
It's good. It plays into the fantasy. Even though like I wasn't initially on board with the ice form of this, like I feel like I'm surprised it wasn't kind of like a more physical blood oriented setup, but I guess they have a more of an overall elemental theme for the druid, and the ice wolf is is a bit more unique, I suppose. I'm on board at this point. So in Keth, I found a support gem and put AoE on cross slash, which is probably unnecessary, but it was satisfying.
Droid,
To make
no?
that thing even bigger, it's already like huge. I could see some nice screen-sized X marks the spots on bosses being pretty
A
funny.
zrobimy sobie właśnie ankietę. Paul. Jesteś furasem typu 3 minuty ankieta. Można zagłosować. Jestem...
And I had a pretty interesting encounter here too. So the first unique boss that I saw on a Vile Sacrifice platform kind of caught me off guard a little bit.
O, i jest dominacja wilkołaka. Wewnętrzny wilkołak się odzywa w wielu widzach. Na drugim miejscu niedźwiedź, wyvern najmniej. No, ja się zastanawiam. Jestem właśnie też podzielony między niedźwiedziem i wilkołakiem.
Fortunately for them, I instantly froze them and was about to finish them off before they even had a chance to do anything.
Dzięki,
But I
Mago.
decided to hold back and just give them a chance. I wanted to see what the
Siemka
boss did.
Piotras.
Siema. Where damage. Schował się oponent, chyba był nietargetowalny.
Shortly after that, in this fun tomb encounter, I was really sad that I didn't choose Herald of Ice earlier. Because, oh man, that's going to be so satisfying there. Well, it launches soon. I can try that again, perhaps.
W ogóle dobrze rozumiem, że ten High Priest, z którym teraz walczył przed chwilą, to był jakiś nowy encounter, taki walowy. Czekaj, czy tu w ogóle Lesser Jeweler Orb nie wypadł? Ty, patrzcie na to, patrzcie na to, patrzcie na to. Mamy gwarantowanego forlinka w drugim akcie. Tak, a widzisz, i wcześniej chcą ci dawać czwarty socket. Co ciekawe.
I'm pleased to report that Wolfform has a pretty fresh take in this regard.
Czekaj, coś ominąłem.
Wolfform of this meant the sound. And finally,
Trzelink? Nie, podstawowo masz trzelink, a Lesser Jeweler Orb daje ci trzeci support slot, czyli daje ci forlink.
yeah, finding new and fun ways to torment the sad fire baby boss is a personal hobby of mine. I don't know if you've heard of this genre of activity, but I'm pleased to report that Wolfform has a pretty fresh take in this regard. When he finally summoned the will to bring up his health bar, only to get frozen and then killed. Oh. So as we head into
Cinderbark
the
talizman
Bad
tam był
Valley, you
jakiś?
get to see some of the now core Abyss mechanic is having a presence in the campaign. And I did actually get quite a few crafting items from Abyss during Acts 2 and 3, which does surprise me because Val Temple is giving out a ton of crafting power, and it feels like we didn't really even lose Abyss in this regard. I expected that Abyss would just be like non-existent till endgame, but it's there and you actually get to use it. I used it a few times. I was maybe getting a bit overconfident at this point because I suffered a classic for me giant skelly squish death. I swear it's like one of my most common deaths in PoE2 is just getting these guys falling on me.
No nieźle. Druid ugiął się pod potężnym
Boss
szkieletorem.
points out a minor nuisance in freeze builds like this. Some larger bosses in PoE2 have a mechanic where they cannot be frozen or like stopped during certain attack sequences or time frames. That can mean that you basically don't get to freeze them if you're killing them fast enough, which is kind of a bummer. I get that there's a few reasons to have a mechanic like this, but I think that maybe it could use some fine-tuning, or maybe like a change like allowing the freeze to function, but the enemy is still able to move while frozen if
To jest ten exposure, bo jeśli tak, to wychodzi na to, że ten exposure jest nakładany tylko naprawdę na bardzo małej, że przeciwnik musi być naprawdę blisko, żeby go dostać.
like a giant
Tak to
Titan
wygląda.
enemy like this. They just, get slowed. I think designs like that are great because then you don't get locked out of your actual build's mechanics. You can still have your like on freeze mechanic of like firing icicles at the boss. Anyway, it's not like the fight was difficult or anything. It's just kind of like a bummer that he spends, a full minute.
Swoją drogą, w momencie, gdy to oglądamy, bardzo niedługo będzie The Game Awards i chłopaki już do mnie napisali, że jak mam oglądać z nimi, to muszę przebrać się w odświętną koszulę. Tak więc od razu wam mówię, zaraz będą przebieranki.
99% freeze.
Może garnitur jeszcze. Dzięki karczom za 12 miesięcy.
I ended up getting another Val Temple in the
Dobry
latter
wieczór.
half of Act 2 with more room upgrading and plenty of crafting benches to socket quality and add mods to my gear. And this nicely combines with the Abyss crafts that I had access to now as well to round out some key gear pieces, upgrading a chest or
No,
fixing
patrzcie,
up a weapon, for
desekrejty
example.
zostały.
I actually managed to get the next Spirit Gem tier here. And I was
O,
definitely
Wolfpack. Pokaż, co jest dokładnie na nim
For example.
napisane. Dzięki
Actually,
Teams. Przywołujesz wolf
Dobry
kompaniony,
wieczór, mniej niż 3.
zajmujące 1 companion slot. Okej, czyli one są tak jakby liczą się jako kompanion, a to ciekawe, czyli może dostaniemy właśnie też wsparcie dla kompanionów z lewej strony drzewka, to ciekawe, a widzisz.
To get the next spirit gem tier here, and I was definitely tempted to take her advice, but I wanted to check out some of the new stuff. There's 2 new options here. So Wolfpack, it does exactly what you think. It summons a Wolfpack. Apparently you can also get a crazy number of wolves with this plus pounce at endgame. I want to say like specific numbers that the dev said to me because I can't remember what the actual number was, but it was higher than I expected based on the numbers
Za
that you see
20
here, which I
wilków
think like
możesz mieć.
I can have 4 and 5 right now, so 9. But I guess if you think you can have 9 now and then assume what you could have by endgame, well, yeah, you can maybe get the idea. Anyway, I don't know the potential of the minion druid side of things.
Czyli barkskin, słuchajcie, działa trochę inaczej niż barkskin, który mieliśmy kiedyś w jedynce chociażby. Tutaj barkskin on pokazał... O, czekaj.
You can maybe get the idea. Anyway, I don't know.
Pokaż go jeszcze na chwilę. Gdy otrzymujesz cios, to zdobywasz część armora. Aha, czyli otrzymujesz armor bazujący na tym, ile energy shielda straciłeś. Ciekawe.
The minion druid side of things. They're trying to put every single build in druid, so I'm sure some of them will probably not be fully well-rounded, but I don't know, maybe there's some wolfpack potential there. Anyway, I opted for the other choice, the defensive spirit skill barkskin. This grants you a flat armor bonus for a duration.
Patrząc na to, że będziesz miał pewnie też skalowanie z armor applies to elemental damage taken i jeszcze do tego jakiś divine shield, to może być naprawdę ciekawe. Cześć Rajoze i Patrycja.
On hit to your energy shield. With good energy shield recovery and armor plus duration scaling, for example, I think you can probably stack some pretty substantial armor from this. I'm actually kind of shocked that it doesn't have like a hard limit. I'm used to skills like this having or needing hard limits because inevitably some player gets infinite armor from it or something. But I guess in this case, since it's duration based and it requires enemy hits, like I don't think you could self-hit
nie możesz się self-hitować, żeby to aktywować. No to mogłoby być OP.
Anyway, I really like this skill. It's actually kind of messed around with a little bit for building my character, even though I was just in the campaign, I didn't really need it. I took the Zealot's Oath keystone to convert life regeneration to energy shield regen when my life was full, and that keeps it present in combat much better than recharge. And that enables barkskin to do a whole lot more, I think. It's not really like a flashy skill, but I don't know, I really like this one. It seems fun to build around hybrid life, ES, regen, and stacking defensive buffs that like spike the more dangery, and I like that style mechanic. It's neat. And with Druid having like
Trzeba zobaczyć, obok jakich nodek będzie teraz Zeal of Souls, bo na przykład Oracle ma te fajne punkty, nie? Że od keystone'ów można wszystko rozdawać w pobliżu. Jakby ktoś grał tym nowym Ascendancy Oracle.
I can anticipate, this having a bit more of an impact as well. Anyway, alongside Cross Slash, Ferocious Roar, and Spell Totem are the other level 7 gems. Spell Totem lets you link a spell to be kind of autocast by the totem, but in PoE 2 it costs 3 charges. That sounds kind of annoying, but at least for bear form, it's super easy to have 3 endurance charges passively and quickly even by just spending rage. So it's probably pretty easy to use it there for some like decent utility spell options, but it's not something I've really given any thought at this point. It seems supplemental for sure. Ferocious Roar looks pretty good. It's a bear form Warcry skill that lets you gain more rage and break some armor in its default form, but the real use case is probably that you can link normal human Warcries like Infernal Cry into it to trigger those instead. That lets you use Infernal Cry in bear form, whereas otherwise you'd swap to human form to do it. And that will, pair nicely with the Fire Fisher Volcano playstyles. For whatever reason, I can't really recall, I didn't end up getting a chance to test either of these.
Ale ich nie przetestował.
They need like other skills to make much use of them, or I forgot one of those. Anyway, end of Act 2 is often a huge difficulty spike for many builds, and weirdly I was getting a little bit under-leveled through Act 2 and 3, and also feeling like the cost of my erratic gem cutting choices as I try to test anything and everything. So, despite that, I managed pretty fine, with the sustain spells helping in those sketchier choke points, and freeze taking care of everything else.
Czyli freeze mu pomagał. Okej. Widzicie, youtuber z Krakowa.
And then with Jamin Ra himself, I was actually pretty dang impressed.
Dzięki
I
pan Herbatka,
3
dzięki.
in second form, and while my damage had fallen off a bit at this point, it was pretty damn smooth fight. He didn't give me much grief.
będziesz zapomniany.
I need more time for this.
Heading into Act 3, I spent a bit more time on wolf form. I can't help myself, it's so much fun. It's fast to run through zones. First though, something pretty unexpected awaited me on the Vile Sacrifice altar.
Oho! Zespałnił się Quadrilla Bosik. Jakiś nowy encounter kolejny, po tym jak High Priesta pokazali w akcie drugim. Reskin walowy Quadrilli, nie! Też z tym slamem.
That's pretty cheeky, putting enough.
Przecież ludzie, nie wiedząc o tym, wpadną na HC i zginą, ale to będzie kino, nie chcę być jednym z nich.
The Death Monkey in this act just
XD.
here randomly. Anyway, it's time for that build change up. Apologies in advance, but I do not get time to return to bear form. But you know it's good, right? I think you've seen enough to say that. I do have something else for you, though. The moment that some of you have been desperately waiting for. It's officially time to water my plants.
Okay.
Now we're Path of Exiling. Gem level 9 gives
Poka.
Thrashing Vines. It's a plant spell that summons large vines that slap the ground and enemies too.
Czy to jest Zyra gameplay w
Plus
końcu?
Entangle and the Thunderstorm spell, we have everything we need to water our plants.
Poka.
The accelerated growth support seems pretty key here. That's a good one to
Coś madej.
incorporate into this. It lets you trigger exploding flowers whenever you overgrow your plants. Oh, it's so good. So each plant spell here has a mechanic where it will overgrow in some way if watered by thunderstorms. I can't get over how silly plant druid is anyway.
Ty
For
faktycznie,
Entangle,
pa!
it makes the fishes last
Takie
longer.
niemalże jak macki, nie? Takie korzenie tutaj wystają, gdy je podlejesz i walą przeciwników.
And for
To
thrashing
fajne.
vines, it makes them 50% larger and do 50% more damage. So really chunky for that. But Entangle's not really doing much. Just making them last longer is not really a big deal by itself. It's not something you would do if you weren't just kind of doing it for other reasons anyway. But that accelerated growth gem adds explosions. So that makes it absolutely worth it. I'm pretty sure you can also do the same thing on Briar Patch too, though I'm not sure I ended up testing that. So yeah, I see some accelerated growth on Briar Patch and on Entangle, and then you're scaling up the Thrashing Vines in other ways, most likely. This is a duration sustained damage spellcaster style, and there's plenty of nodes for that in the Druid's area, including an actual plant cluster that has a chance for plants to overgrow
też punkty związane typowo z
even without
kwiatkami, z
thunderstorm raining on
roślinkami.
them.
Widziałem na drzewku.
So
Dzięki,
that
Vex.
with the support from earlier means you get some exploding flowers when that happens too, so
Siema,
that's a nice little
Piotrek
boost.
3.
It's mostly physical damage here with the plants,
Siema.
so you could likely walk in the later tornado spell that's physical as well. And maybe you can even go poison. I know there's plenty of gems pitched in that direction because of the
Czyli
existence
roślinki
of,
są
like, the other plants
fizycznymi
up on the other side of
obrażeniami,
the
dla
tree.
tych, którzy się zastanawiali,
I have to
czy
mention my
physical,
favorite
czy
upgrade
chaos.
that I messed around with, and that was putting Pin on Entangle. I'm in love with Pin after playing a Tactician. Pin's amazing. And Entangle did an excellent job of rapidly building up Pin too. And I do think Pin or some sort of slow scaling seems like a very good idea here, as you really want to cause enemies to, just get bogged down and stacked up in your 4 overlapped entangles and 2 giant
Dzięki stary za 2 lata.
24 lata, dobry wieczór.
Dziękuję, siema, dobry wieczór.
vine slap fields with briar patches and double storms on top. That's where all the fun's happening. You want all the mobs to be in there. So putting them in place is really nice. But you could totally add maim and do like slow effectiveness scaling as well. I've done that sort of stuff on grenades before, it's really nice. Now you may be thinking, looking at the footage here, that DPS looks a bit meh, and you'd be right. But in Rainy Druid's defense, I was still using my level 2 fire damage stuff at this point, so I just kind of forgot about it all this time.
Powiem wam, że jak na 21 skilli tylko w tym druidzie, bo na razie mało skilli dostajemy z tego, co pokazali, to strasznie dużo tutaj jest różnych narzędzi, takich bardzo różnorodnych, nie? Popierdzielone.
Focused on the other shapeshifting stuff. Classic spellcast builds using Act 1 weapons into endgame, right? But bear with me though, as I do get myself a physical spell staff kind of soon. It takes me a little while, but I get it eventually. In the meantime, I do grab Oil Barrage for the Wyvern, which exposes enemies just like Oil Grenade. But we'll come back to this skill a bit later, as it's got a pretty fun, empowered
Rzucamy
inversion
z
that I test
mordy
later on.
wiwerniej olejkiem. Dzięki Strusi za Prima.
So my lower DPS from gear and underleveled gems and missing passives and all that caused me to have a bit of mana issues with this playstyle.
Spoko Alekska, nic się nie dzieje. Dobranoc Halincia, papa.
here. That's not untypical for things like this, and it was made much worse by my questionable choice to use overabundance on everything, doubling the cast that I needed to do on my, you know, lacking DPS. I'm happy to say that this was a problem that solved itself after I got a couple of upgrades, since it was mostly just the fact that I was missing a lot of damage ultimately.
Nie do końca mi się podoba ten kompresor, tak jakby, czy jak to tam powiedzieć, głosu. Że druid ma zmieniony głos w momencie, gdy... No właśnie, wypowiada jakąś kwestię i zmieniony w formę zwierzęcą.
Despite my waning DPS at this point, Zakoto went pretty smoothly, and this playstyle is just pretty comfy overall. You know, sustained AoE.
Teraz na przykład to Out of Mana mówił jako wilkołak, ale to nie brzmiało tak wilkołakowo jak dla mnie. No właśnie powinien bardziej ryczeć czy coś może.
It's interesting how different it is from the other playstyles I'd messed with on the Druid though, like, it's such a varied class.
I'm not ready yet. Have a vow, don't give anything for free.
No nie wiem, co uważacie o tym
So I
głosie?
finally managed to get myself that proper staff, getting a Fizz Spell Gems one with some nice Fizz Spell damage
plus
too.
Fizz
And I didn't do the math on my crafting
staffy
choice, so
pod
I don't want to
kwiatki.
hear about it. Don't worry about it. Either way, this thing made a huge difference from my old piece of garbage that I had. I had like 50% fire damage or something like that.
Dzięki, Vex.
I got it just in time to go through the often aggravating Trial of Chaos.
Kurde, znowu
Most of
się.
the encounters here, and at this point with the upgrade, the damage was enough to move through, even through the escort quests pretty comfortably. I actually had one of the comfiest nightmare bird kills too. This thing is an absolute
No właśnie, nienawidzę trafiać tego bossa na Trail of Chaos.
I was really happy I didn't have to like rerun it just because like it went perfectly first time. Circle around, dump everything on the giant boss. Perfect. So this let me unlock the Bringer of the Apocalypse node, which I tested a little bit later on, as I was still testing the
To tego
Planty
jestem
Druid
chyba
on my new
najciekawszy. Recenzyjki tego Apokalips. Bo to niby trwa tam ile? 12 sekund czy ile? Nie pamiętam, ale on tutaj widziałem wcześniej, że przez chwilę miał buffa 23 sekundy. I to jest skill, który niby jak naładujesz sobie Glory, to jak Heart of God. Nie Heart of God. Hammer of God. Rzucasz takiego ulcika.
I just got the staff, let me have a chance
Dzięki,
with that.
Sobusz. Dawaj, niech to odpali zaraz.
I'm still underleveled and missing passives, and this cheeky lady here likes to roll out of my AoEs, so that took a little while, but overall, like, once I got it online, the plant druid, my plants druid felt very comfortable and very fun. Enjoy watering your plants at launch, garden druids.
Czyli co?
So next up-
Czyli można zrobić druida pod podlewanie roślinek i to może działać. Znaczy ciężko sobie to sobie wyobrazić na klirze jakoś szczególnie, ale okej, jest potencjał.
I wanted to mess around a bit more
To
with
zajebiste.
Wyvern and also test Apocalypse, the uber skill from
Kto z
the
was gra
shaman.
podlewaczem
We'll
na
get to Apocalypse
start?
in a moment. First I wanted to return to the oil barrage skill.
Rośliniarzem,
What's
no.
normally a utility skill here
Ogrodnikiem.
becomes a pretty hilarious lightning single target barrage when empowered with a power charge. So it spends a power charge if you have one to make the barrage much longer with a bunch of added lightning damage. And if you have 3 charges, you can just like hold the button down for one long mega barrage. With Devour, you can very easily, you know, generate 3 power charges. So I was actually able to use this and the melee lightning form a bit more comfortably here. Indeed, like the combination now of having Devour, Wing Blast, and Oil Barrage made Wyvern feel a bit more well-rounded, but is still definitely the more complicated one to play.
No
here.
Wyverna zdecydowanie się wydaje najbardziej taka...
hilarious. I will not be surprised if we see some sort of like boss barrage
Że się trzeba
deletion
nastarać.
endgame build here. I don't know if you can really call it a one-shot when it's a barrage like that, but you know. I expect to see something disgusting with this. That's if, you know, people figure out some easy way to get those first set of power charges at least.
To było dużo, ale wymagało stania w miejscu, jak taki kanonek zmieniał się w kanonka trochę.
So I didn't get a chance to barrage a boss. Ketsuli died before I could stun them, so well. Good
A, no
problem
tak,
to
no w
have,
sumie
I guess.
podczas
So
zestunowania
surprised
bossa
that I was
możesz
doing
takiego
okay damage
kanonka
just off the
odpalić.
back of,
No
like,
tak.
Basic kind of.
Ty, ale damage
Wyvern
jest,
gameplay
patrzcie, on
here,
tym
not really doing
wsadzi.
anything fancy.
Nie no, ten boss nawet się nie zdążył z tej interfazy zrobić. Nawet blisko nie było. Okej. Dobra, jest potencjał w panie
And
wywernie.
finally, let's take a look at
Oj,
Apocalypse now.
apokalipsę. Tego
I
lecika.
didn't really have any supports for this skill, so this is just pure vanilla Apocalypse, but it's pretty strong right away, and it seems usable pretty often too. Apocalypse is a glory skill, with glory for this being gained by hitting enemies with elemental damage, so obviously you're just doing that
Zdobywasz
constantly,
staki
especially
glory
like
po
the
prostu
sustain
bijąc
spells,
przeciwników
just
i odpalasz
constantly ticking that up at max rate.
długiego
So
buffa.
it's easy
Poka.
enough with the added random elemental damage on the node that you get before it as well, so it's going to happen regardless of your build.
Okej, odpalił. No i spadają jakieś tam meteory.
Begone, foul creature.
Using the skill causes a long duration where you passively rain down meteors, hailstorms, and lightning crashes
Wygląda
randomly around you.
efekciarsko, ale
It's
ciężko tutaj
duration-based
ocenić
as well,
siłę.
So, you know, there's room to make it last longer too if you want.
A
What
jakbyś tu
can I
jeszcze
say?
AOE
Skills like this
zestakował?
are really fun. I expected to struggle a lot on the Viper boss. She's tiny, she's dangerous, she moves around a lot. Doing this on Wyvern, I was like groaning, walking up to
Firestorm
it.
z
But
temu.
it was okay. Apocalypse and some range spam from Wyvern form handled it fairly well. Even if it wasn't super quickly, it went okay. I'm coping.
Widzę potencjał w tym apokalipsie i jakbyś nastakował
So I had a
faktycznie
brief
dużo
moment
skill
to-
effect duration i AOE po prostu, żeby takie giga meteory sadziło przez, nie wiem, pół minuty, nie?
Play with Tornado, a physical duration spell I mentioned earlier. It can suck up elemental ground to empower itself.
Okej, stawiasz
The only
tornado,
problem is that it's surprisingly hard to do that on the
który
Druid.
wysysa jakby elementalową podłogę, jak zostawisz gdzieś na przykład, nie wiem, Berlin Ground albo coś. O kurde, Narwal z subskrypcją poziomu 3. W ogóle dziękuję Narwal ślicznie i dziękuję też wszystkim, którzy przez ostatnie 5 minut zasubskrybowali. Widzę, że jest bardzo dużo, zaraz się konkretnie odniosę, ale jeszcze dokończmy ten filmik, 2 minutki.
Druid's basic skill set at least. So there's the oil barrage is the only way that I really know of by default, and you can ignite that, but it's a little difficult to do.
Pokaż, jak się zmieni
And it
wizualnie
only-
może to
it
tornado,
leaves
gdy je podpali.
Oil ground if it's the non-empowered version. So if you have a power charge and you try to put oil ground down,
O, dobra,
it
ładnie
will-
wygląda.
It will just use the lightning version instead. So that's kind of
Ale mówi,
funny.
że ciężko generalnie jest zawalczyć o tę podłogę, więc może to bardziej pod jakiś party play, że twój kolega będzie taką podłogę robił, nie wiem, chyba Invoker łatwo robił podłogi specjalne, że na przykład grałby twój kolega Invokerem, a ty takim tornadko rzucał.
So I am sure that there's like some easy spells you can pinch from the elemental tree, or like support gem combos or something to generate.
Kolega
ground
nie da
to
rady bez
empower the
glazurnikiem.
tornado. And in the end, it's a fizz spell that you can couple in with the plant, Rainy Druids. You know, tornadoes are something you can add into your storms, I suppose, for a bit of extra sustained area damage there. And you can also work it into your elemental builds with that ground empowerment. It's another sustained spell you can throw down before shapeshifting too. You've got a lot of them at this point. Sadly, that is all I managed to
I
do
tyle.
on my brief visit to the Grinding Gear Games studio this time. It's probably for the best though, as I do need to rest and look after my family. Thanks for all the well wishes as well.
No i fajnie.
I was really stoked to see how much you all enjoyed part 1, and hopefully you enjoyed part 2 as well.
Fajne komentarze zarzucił tutaj Ziggy D. Ja wam podeślę w ogóle ten materiał.
I'm looking forward to seeing you on stream at launch,
Tutaj
and
go
maybe for
macie.
some Druid and Val Temple guides on YouTube and Max Roll 2 afterwards.
Łapka w górę.
Definitely looking forward to playing the Druid myself in a much less rushed fashion this time. Just can't decide whether I wanted to
Ej,
focus
coraz
on
lepiej to wygląda. Naprawdę mnie przekonuje ten druid. Nie byłem aż tak przekonany, ale teraz jestem nahypowany. Dosłownie, żebym sobie zagrał. Dawajcie mi to.